in the country so that we can, come out with world standard. And by the time we achieve this this position, then we ramp up the cultivation and production, and we find out that we will be self-sufficient. And this is all we need to achieve. And invariably, we will solve the problem of foreign exchange.
It's very interesting, this scenario. In the oil sector, the government is the one owing the fuel importers on subsidies and bridging claims. In the rice business, it's the opposite. The government says you're the ones owing. Now, have you had any engagement with the government, with the customs, and the central bank and say, look, some of our members are owing, but because we're doing backward integration, we are unable to pay, or perhaps we need a bailout, or you need some restructuring. What do you do?
Yeah,
what have you been doing in terms of engaging these two government agencies?
Generally, there has been discussions. You see, it's a business relationship. There has been discussions. Before the issues occurred in the first instance, there were things that were put in place, and it's a matter of ensuring that whatever was put in place is seen through. You can see it's not only in rice. You were just talking about a number of companies now coming short in their profit margins and what have you. Some companies, even in other sectors of the economy, I don't want to mention names, that are incurring losses. It's a sign of the time. It's a tough time, it's a tough economic situation we are in, and people just have to look at, okay, a win-win situation. And the win-win situation is really what I would rather go for. I think the position the CBN is taking is quite laudable. The CBN is saying, okay, if farmers are saying we've got paddy rice for milling, okay, what do? Support these companies. If they need funding, if they need finance, support them to buy the paddy. Those who need to go into milling, support them to acquire milling facilities that are of world standard, and they will mill the rice for us. We don't need to import it.
So one of the companies that's important, we're going to mention names now. Olam, for example, is into import, but also has the farming as well. On the other hand, how do you think companies of that type should be handled by the regulators?
Well, I think these are companies that should be encouraged by the regulators. I'm not saying that the government should not enforce compliance in any way.
In terms of
duties and what have you, there is need for enforcement. But then I'm saying companies that are investing in, in the backward integration needs to be encouraged, because this is what the economy desires.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we have a few more issues to go through from the government angle, and some of the what road should we try ahead. But we'll also look back a little bit at what was achieved during the last Agric Minister's administration and see, as far as rice was concerned, you take us through that. You are the man on the ground. Akin Ogunbiyi, Executive Director from Elephant Group, talking about the rice business. Welcome back to the program, the final 15 minutes of the show, when we're wrapping up the program as usual. We'll continue with the business of rice. Still here in the studios live to you, Akin Ogunbiyi, who is the Executive Director at Elephant Group. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Let's step back in time to the Mr. Adesina's tenure as the Agric Minister, who's now the new president at the African Development Bank. Talk to us about rice policy and actions that took place during those years he was at the Ministry of Agriculture.
I will tell you what, Akin Adesina's tenure at the Ministry of Agriculture was one of the best things that ever happened to Nigerian agriculture. Because, I mean, it was able to encourage everybody to come into the value chain. It started by encouraging the production at the agro level, providing very good varieties of rice. I mean, rice paddies. I mean, for cultivation. Then he gave seedlings to farmers for cultivation. And you know, one of the major important things when we talk about rice milling is homogeneity. You know, the seedlings must come out, and so that you can say, okay, your brand, if they taste it today, it must be the same thing next week, must be the same thing next year. So there is need for us to get the variety right. So he introduced varieties of rice, I mean, of seeds into the market, and he was giving this free to farmers for cultivation. Having cultivated that, farmers were able to sell to millers, who, at the end of the day, now came up with locally produced rice, you know, which was not the case we had before. And that situation we needed to look at is that it did not stop at that. It backed it up with an efficient and effective system of fertilizer distribution, which also, I mean, you cannot produce rice without fertilizer. You need fertilizer to produce. So, well, I mean, it came up with a policy of Growth Enhancement Scheme, GES. And this program has been a very good success. Everybody is applauding it. I recall Cameroon. I met with the Cameroon Minister of Agriculture. He was telling me he needed to copy that model. You know, a lot of countries, I mean, Africa, are thinking about copying this model. So it's a very good model. And I'm happy that President Muhammadu Buhari has equally said that he's going to continue that policy. You know, so these are laudable policies that Nigeria needs to commend Akindele for. It's a very wonderful thing that he did.
So why do we still import so much?
Well, we seem to think that we can solve the problem within such a short time. It's a long way to go. You don't get there in one day. You know, the Nigerian consumption of rice today is about 6 million tons.
Per year?
Yes.
170 million people consumed about 6
million tons.
6 million tons of rice.
Of course, yes.
And have rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It has become that. It has become like that. Mm. You know, so and we're producing just about 3 million tons.
A few years ago, in particular during the President Obasanjo's tenure, you had a few state governments in the southwest and others starting local rice. Fada in Ogun State, for example. Okay. Ekiti State used to have Ibema rice. Then you go down south to the south-south, Bayelsa, for example, and a few others. What happened?
Well, we need to understand the fact that, you see, rice cultivation is much more difficult. Yeah, I mean, today you can say Nigeria is the world's largest producer of cassava. Cassava is a lot easier to cultivate than rice. Because rice, you need to cultivate rice in the swampy areas. When you go into the swampy areas, you find out that you are confronted with a lot of problems. You can't even access the places.
By roads.
By roads.
So there's problem of infrastructure.
Problem of infrastructure. For instance, in Elephant Group, we have our grower programs. When we go to some of these farms, we have to come off our 4x4. We jump on motorbikes to ride into the farms. And invariably, when you want to bring out the produce as well, you have the same challenge. You can't bring a truck into the place. If a 4x4 can't go into the farm, then you can imagine taking a truck in there to take the paddy out. You know, so these are the challenges. Aside from that, you also talk of the problem of irrigation. You see, if you talk about rice sufficiency in Africa, for instance, only Egypt has succeeded in achieving this.
How did they do
it? Because they invested heavily into irrigation. Part of the problems we have in Nigeria is that we need to invest more into irrigation. We have the waters.
But what happens with the Fadama project? We've run this for years, haven't we? With the Fadama...
The Fadama projects are still alive.
Yes, it's still alive.
The projects are still alive.
About the third phase of it.
But then, I mean...
Hasn't Fadama given us rice? I remember in the 80s, They will run those agricultural projects across almost all the states of the Federation, chicken, eggs, and rice, and whatever. Are those things still there?
They're still there. They're still there. But what we need to do is a concerted effort at actually ramping up the volume.
But how did we come through the 80s to this point when we're not growing less rice, but importing more? We've left the farm, isn't it?
I guess we got carried away. If you saw it about 2 days back, even the registrar of JAM, I think he was in this studio, he was saying people don't even want to study agriculture. You know, these are the issues we need to come back to. Because, I mean, agriculture is actually the only solution to the problem. We should, encourage young ones to study agriculture. We should encourage every entrepreneur to invest in agriculture, and you will see that there will be a turnaround.
Almost everybody wants to set up a petrol refinery. But who wants to set up a rice mill?
How many people want to set up rice mills? All our members, these are members that you are talking about have issues with customs and what have you. I'm not making a case for them, but most of them have set up rice mills. Most of them are involved in cultivation. You know, they have their challenges, quite all right. But then, I mean, it's quite difficult. Farming is difficult. It's not an easy game.
Do you have a rice farm?
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yes, in Niger State. We have 10,000 hectares of land in Niger State. And I tell you, it's not easy clearing the bush itself alone. You can't succeed in clearing 10,000 hectares even in 1 year.
Why is it so difficult?
Because you need implements. Accessibility. I've just told you now, you cannot cultivate rice on the upland. You have to, what you cultivate upland is just one season. You need 2 seasons. You need to be able to do 2 seasons so that you can optimize your volume. So when you do go into the swampy land, that's where you get better yield. And then it's more difficult to clear. It's more difficult to cultivate. I mean, everything is tougher.
So what would you be asking those state governments in the South belt to do? I'm heading to Bayelsa today, and we'll be sitting down with the Investment and Economic Forum there. And agriculture is one of the things that Bayelsa State government, for example, is talking about, that this 2-day forum starting tomorrow, about investing in. So what advice would you have for them to help you guys in the rice business?
It's very important that we actually focus
I'm going to take that message down.
Rice is a cash crop. And Nigerians have very heavy appetite for rice. So we need to focus more on rice cultivation. We can achieve it.
What do you want specifically from, say, Bayelsa, for example? If I use that as decade, do you want Governor Seriake, for example, to build more roads, to make water available for you? What environment do you want in that particular part of
yeah, the duty of government is to create an enabling environment. So we expect them to be able to create access into the farms for us. We expect them to be able to create avenues for smallholder farmers to have access to funding. We want, situation wherein those who wants to go into milling also have capital, some capital for us to mill.
So you want something like concessional interest rate on bank loans?
You see, it's a worldwide thing. Everywhere in the world, farmers must be giving concession. Agriculture must be giving concession. Otherwise, we won't feed ourselves.
That's very interesting. Okay, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Akin Ogunbiyi is an executive director at Elephant Group, one of the rice importers and millers in Nigeria. He's also a member of that business group. You know what the earnings looking like today? Very disappointing, as you heard from GSK and Honeywell Flap. A few other earnings are also on tap. Red Star Express is declaring a cash dividend to the closure date. If you're investing in the market, you know what those dates are. Let's keep it at that. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, July the 20th, or the 30th, I beg your pardon. We'll be live to you from Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, for the 2015 edition of the Investment and Economics Forum. That's where this program will be live to you tomorrow, the first day of this 2-day event, building an industrial state down south Nigeria. We'll get to see you tomorrow from there. Also on Friday, live from Yenagoa in Bayelsa State. For now, out of Lagos, and I will see you later. in 24 hours. Do have a great day.